I know yesterday's video was kind of long and people kind of got lost in the legal jargon. So we back again today, and this time we gonna do this as short and as fast as possible while giving y'all the same details and breaking down how this document proves that Wack 100 was not only a witness in Big U's case, but also how the government used statements in situations involving Wack 100 to get wiretaps for Big U's case. And we gonna go through the legal process of how this issue is dealt with in a courtroom to show y'all why he was even mentioned in these documents. With that said, let me direct your attention to this document that says witness interviews and assets. It says, witness interviews have been conducted during the investigation that have been effective in gathering information about Henley's involvement with the homicide. They have also been effective in gathering information related to Henley's collection of extortion payments. Some of the interviews have also led to the recruitment of a few of the aforementioned confidential sources who have been used during this case. However, as described above, those confidential sources have taken this investigation as far as it can go and short of meeting its prosecutorial goals and objectives. So what they are doing here is they are attempting to convince the judge that using confidential sources and confidential witnesses does not serve the purpose of the investigation anymore. That strategy can no longer be used to take this case forward. Additionally, in my conversation with CHS1, CHS2, and other law enforcement, I have learned that Henley associates with a tight-knit circle of people who have known each other for decades. Continued interviews without court-authorized interception of the target location could unnecessarily alert the targeted communicators to the interests of law enforcement in their illegal activity. So what he's saying is, based on the information that he got from the informants, everybody who is around Big U is very close to him, and it's a tight-knit circle. Therefore, if we continue to try to interview people and try to get these people to come talk to us, then it will alert the people we are investigating that they are being investigated. This is where he starts to talk about how they can get around that and why they should be allowed to get around that. He says the interviews would also have the effect of alerting the targeted communicators and others, thereby compromising the investigation and resulting in possible destruction or concealment of documents and other evidence. Additionally, if the targeted communicators are alerted to the government's investigation, they may flee the jurisdiction in order to avoid apprehension and prosecution. For example, now, do you see it says for example? So this is an example of how an interview could alert the targeted communicator. Example, in July 2022, the FBI Houston Division conducted a telephone interview of Cash Jones, aka Wack 100, about his interactions with a subject of their investigation. The FBI Houston Division believes C. Jones recorded the interview because the entirety of the interview was posted to YouTube the following day. Based on my training, experience, and knowledge of the investigation, I believe additional interviews of associates of the targeted communicators will not stay private and alert them to LAMTFVG's investigation of the enterprise. So, right there, he's saying an example of witnesses leaking information that could alert these targeted people is Cash Jones leaking the information from the investigation with the FBI Houston Division. It also says, I believe, additional interviews. So there's already been some interviews. But anyway, let's focus on Cash Jones, right? Because something I want y'all to understand is right here in this moment, they are using Cash Jones leaking of an interview in a separate situation as a foundation for why they should be allowed to get a wiretap in this situation. Legally, you cannot do that. But let me show you how they were able to get around that. Now, first things first, just like I told you, no, the government cannot use a witness leak from a completely different, unrelated case as a generalized legal shortcut to bypass witness interviews or establish necessity for a Title III wiretap in your specific case. Meaning they cannot use the fact that Cass Jones leaked information in an FBI Houston division investigation as a shortcut to bypass witness interviews or establish necessity for a wiretap in Big U's case. They cannot legally do that. Let's look at what these things mean. Title III necessity and case specific proof, meaning in order for them to get the wiretap, they have to prove it's necessary and they have to have case specific proof. So they can't use proof from another case, right? That alone tells you that Wack is connected to this case because they wouldn't have even been able to mention him in this paperwork if it was completely unrelated. Anyway, the necessity requirement under 18 USC 2518 1C, a Title III wiretap application must include a full and complete statement as to whether other normal investigative procedures have been tried and failed or why they reasonably appear to be unlikely to succeed or too dangerous. So, in order to get a wiretap, you have to show the judge that other normal procedures have been tried and that they have failed, or that they appear to be unlikely to succeed, or they may be too dangerous, right? In your case. So in order to get this wiretap from this judge, they had to prove to him that they've already tried other things, which is why they are mentioning, hey, we have tried witness interviews, but the FBI Houston division did an interview with this guy and he leaked the entire interview. So we don't think doing interviews is a good idea over here. But let's keep going. Let's get to the case-specific evaluation because I said it, they can't just show that it's necessary. They have to use case-specific facts, right? So it can't be this guy leaked information in another case, so we shouldn't have to follow the procedure in our case, right? Boom. The necessity requirement must be demonstrated with facts specific to your specific investigation and the targets named in the application. What this says to me is that the reason why Wack 100 was mentioned in the application and they mentioned that he leaked information in that other office's investigation is because he was a witness in this investigation. And they're saying if we go and interview this witness, he's going to do the same thing to us that he did to them. So you should just give us a wiretap. That's what's happening right here. As y'all see, it has to be specific to your investigation and the target's name. So if Wack 100 was not connected to Big U, y'all see it got Henley's name at the top. If Wack 100 was not connected to this investigation, if Wack 100 was not a witness in this investigation, if he was not the person that they were using to say, hey, we can't keep using our witnesses, we got to go get a wiretap now. If he was not the person, his name wouldn't even be here. It has to be case specific. So there's no reason for them to mention. And if you look at the earlier part of the document, it mentions CHS1, CHS2, who we know to be witnesses and informants in this case, and other law enforcement. And then it mentions none other than Wack 100. But let's keep going because there's something else that you have to see, which is called the exhaustion of alternatives. Now, when it comes to this, Law enforcement must explain why standard techniques such as physical surveillance, grand jury subpoenas, undercover agents, or interviewing specific witnesses will not work or are too dangerous in your case. So once again, they have to list why interviewing specific witnesses will not work or too dangerous in your case. So when you see Wack 100's name and they saying we can't interview this specific witness, it won't work because he's going to leak the information. That tells you again, Wack 100 is considered a witness. I know I sound repetitive, but I'm going over each category and tying it back to this so y'all can see exactly, how this is coming together. Now, let's discuss why a remote leak does not apply. No blanket exemptions, okay? A leak by a witness in an entirely separate proceeding does not legally or logically prove that a witness in your current distinct case will leak information or that interviewing people connected to you in your case is inherently unavailable or safe. So you cannot bring in the fact that this happened in another case and use that, because the burden is you have to prove that it won't work in my case. In this specific, in United States versus Henley, they have to prove that interviewing witnesses won't work. The example they are using is, hey, we have this witness that's leaking information. Risk of suppression, right? And this is why I said in my video yesterday that if things went the way Wack wants us to believe that they went, then Big U is about to get this whole wiretap thrown out. If federal agents or prosecutors insert generic boilerplate arguments or rely on unrelated external events to pretend they satisfy the exhaustion requirements of your case without actually evaluating local realities, the defense can move to suppress the wiretap evidence. You see what I'm saying? It has to be specific to your case. The fact that they are mentioning Wack 100 in this paperwork as a reason why they can't interview witnesses, and Wack is not related to this at all, as he claims, then Big U has automatic grounds to get his wiretap suppressed. Again, it says, if federal agents or prosecutors insert generic boilerplate arguments or rely on unrelated external events to pretend they satisfied the exhaustion requirement for your case without actually evaluating local realities, the defense can move to suppress the wiretap evidence for failing the statutory necessity test. So this is statutory. You have to prove necessity. Now ask yourself, how does saying that Wack 100 leaked information in a different investigation prove that it's necessary to skip over interviews and just do wiretaps in this investigation unless Wack is a target as far as being a witness? If Wack is not the witness that they are referring to, not being able to interview. Now, I know some of y'all gonna get lost and say, okay, well, if they saying they can't interview Wack, how is Wack an informant? Let me break this down to you. I want to direct your attention back to the original complaint filed in Big U's case, where it details this alleged robbery that happened to victim 1. And victim 1 was later instructed to pull up on Big U, and Big U told him that's how you rob yourself, and demanded $10,000 from victim 1 to ensure that other robberies did not occur. Of course, this is all after allegedly giving victim 1 back the stuff that he was robbed for. Now, Loose Cannon, who is identified as Williams in this indictment, later admitted to this robbery and the aftermath on a podcast, on the No Jumper podcast, after stating that Williams was Henley's right-hand man, Williams explained, so basically he'll manipulate things. We'll go and do something, and then the same niggas we do it to show up at the house like 10 minutes later as we trying to count everything. So he's basically saying we go hit a lick, and then as soon as we pull the move, the people that we took it from pull up on us. We be confused, like how? Williams then said that Henley would state, well, we just gonna give like 40,000 back. Wack 100, listen to what it says. Wack 100, who is a rival counterpart of Henley's for the Bloods, was also on the podcast. See how they clearly mention his name? It's nothing. They clearly state who they are talking about that said this. Anyway, it says, Wack 100, who is a rival counterpart of Henley's for the Bloods, was also on the podcast and stated, you know why he wanted to give dude back the 40, right? So they using Wack's words to corroborate the MO. Right here, Wack is explaining to Loose Cannon and the people viewing the podcast why Big U, because Loose is saying, man, he'll be like, well, we just gonna give back 40,000. And now Wack is saying, you know why he was saying why he wanted to give dude the 40, right? Because he was gonna charge him 20 for getting it back. So they're using Wack's words in the original complaint right there. Fast forward to 2026 and a new indictment has been filed. This time they are clearly using Wack's words, and this is a new overt act that has been added to this racketeering charge. What you have to understand is these are charged acts, but they are charged as acts committed in furtherance of the racketeering. So the racketeering is the actual federal statute that he's charged under. And then that way they can just inculpate all of these different acts and things that he's allegedly done and put them all under one charge instead of having to charge him with 200 different statutes. Anyway, they are clearly using his words and information that he put on the internet once again. This is called open source reporting. Now, this is where it gets really tricky too. Now, let's be very clear about this, because I want y'all to know that I know what I'm talking about. And I want y'all to know what y'all talking about when y'all say this. So to answer the questions, yes, if the interview was published in a newspaper, magazine, podcast, TV broadcast, or public website, that's considered open source intelligence. Now, here's how you can tell the difference based on where the government got the quote. It is open source reporting if the interview was public, the witness spoke to a journalist, a blogger, or posted a video online. Now, let's discuss why it's used. Prosecutors can simply read the article or watch the video and quote it in the indictment. They do not need to interview the person themselves because the person already made the statement publicly. So by all standards, definition, all they have to do is watch your interview, and if you say something on there, then they can use it. They don't have to talk to you at all. But let's keep going, because this statement can be used to establish probable cause in an indictment. And I want to explain to y'all exactly how it's used. And I want y'all to also understand that the threshold for probable cause for an indictment is not the same as reasonable doubt. It's two different standards. One, the standard that they have to use just to get you charged is nowhere near the standard that they have to meet in order to get you convicted. So again, all they have to do is take this guy's words and say, hey, we believe this may have happened because this dude said it happened. Let's charge him with this. We've gathered up some information and, let's put this case out here. They take it to a judge, get it signed on. But now let me explain to you why this is admissible. Because this interview happened on No Jumper and it was completely public, it is 100% open source reporting. In modern federal prosecutions, the government routinely combs through media, articles, podcasts, YouTube interviews, press releases, and social media posts to build their cases. So this is not an uncommon thing in today's times. Actually, this same prosecutor's office, United States Attorney's Office, the Central District of California, is the same office that's handling Dirk's case. And if you've watched Dirk's case, they've very openly stated that they use open source reporting, to gather the intelligence, which is why people like Trapper Ross came up and they actually used the academics interview, so this is common with this office for sure. Anyway, to get an indictment, prosecutors only need to show a grand jury that there is probable cause a crime occurred. Public statements made by people around you, even if they haven't talked to the police, can legally be used to help build that baseline narrative. So once again, Wack has been online talking about his history with Big U, how he knows his wife and all of this stuff. And all that's doing is just establishing credibility. So when he comes out and says certain things, then they like, okay, this is, in one document, he's listed as a rival counterpart. In another document, he's listed as a co-conspirator. This is just something that they doing to muddy the waters, but it's also establishing how these two have a history with each other. And there has been conflict within that, that time frame. Locking in a narrative by putting a person's public quotes directly into your indictment, the government is signaling to that person, hey, we saw what you said publicly, and we gonna hold you to that if we call you to testify. If we called you into trial, we expect you to say the same thing that you said. We ain't no getting up here pleading the fifth or none of that, because you are not facing any charges, so there's no right against self-incrimination. We already have the statements. This is what they are doing for him in exchange for him doing this. This is why he hasn't been charged. Everybody's saying, how is he a co-conspirator and not charged? He's not charged because he continues to provide them information. For the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen it. Open source reporting on Big U daily from him, Eddie Boy, 600, all of these different guys. We've seen it. So what they are doing, they just sitting back watching and like, okay, he keep feeding us information, and at this point they have so much of the information, they can just go back and find different little things. I'm sure they could probably charge Big U with a ton of stuff based off things that Wack has said, but there has to be, somewhere where they draw the line, because then you may upset the court. So, they probably just sitting back on a ton of overt acts like, yeah, well, we just gonna add this or take this out if the case started looking shaky. But in any case, they are using Wack 100 clearly. That's why his name is mentioned in that document. That's what I was saying in the video yesterday, but I get it. The video is kind of long. A lot of people don't have that much time to sit around and watch or listen. And a lot of people are doing reaction videos to my videos, and reacting to an hour-long video is probably like a 3-hour segment. So I wanted to bring this back for y'all, break it down as shortly. I thought I would be able to do it in 10 minutes, but I wanted it to be thorough too, because I want a person who has no knowledge of the law to be able to understand exactly what's going on. He's feeding them information. And because he's feeding them information and they are able to use this information to continuously put charges on Big U, then they don't see a need to lock him up. Locking him up would make him shut up. And then, that would lead to them having less information. At the same time, this tells me that the information that they already have on Big U, they don't feel like it's enough. With that said, I'm going to wrap this one up, man. I hope that this was pretty clear for y'all. Like I said, The only reason he could be mentioned in Big U's paperwork is if he's a part of the case. He continues to say he's not a part of the case. He has nothing to do with the case. Bro, you providing them with the information that they are using. Y'all, a lot of y'all use Chat GPT and stuff like that. Put this video in your Chat GPT. Chat GPT got a free version. Put this video in your Chat GPT and ask Chat GPT. Put these documents, put put this stuff in your Chat GPT or your Grok or whatever it is you use, and ask them what this video is breaking down, what it means. It's that simple. Hit that hype button, hit that like button, man. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that YouTube stuff. I appreciate y'all tuning in. I'm out.